Paragraph page 1153. Last headword was presume. Full stage revision. Okay, let me
Yep.
just scroll down. 1153. Presume. Okay, let's pick up from where you ended. Okay, first question. Why do large organizations need a department to deal solely with administration? Why do large organizations need a department to deal solely with administration? Large organizations
Large
need a
organizations
department
need a
to
department
deal solely with
to deal solely
administration
with administration
because they're
because
complex
they are
and
complex
difficult to coordinate
and difficult to coordinate
effectively.
effectively.
Very good. What do we mean if we describe somebody as clumsy? What do we mean if we describe somebody as clumsy? If we describe
If we
somebody
describe
as clumsy,
somebody
we
as
mean
clumsy,
that
we
they
mean
often drop
that they
things
often drop
or
things
bump into things
or bump into things
either because they
either
are
because
naturally
they are
uncoordinated
naturally
or
uncoordinated
because they are
or
careless.
because they are careless.
Very good. Do you think poor countries should receive more financial aid from affluent nations? Do you think poor countries should receive more financial aid from affluent nations? Yes or no?
Yes,
I think poor
I think
countries
poor countries
should receive more
should
financial
receive
aid
more financial aid
from affluent nations.
from fluent nations.
Very good. Why do we sip hot drink rather than gulp it down? Why do we sip hot drink rather than gulp it down? We sip hot
We
drink
sip
rather
hot
than
drink
gulp it
rather
down
than go it down
because
because might get a heartburn.
that might burn our tongue. Very good. Okay. Is there a great variety in terms of size between different breeds of dogs? Is there a great variety in terms of size between different breeds of dogs? Yes, there
Yes,
is a great
there is
variety
a great variety
in terms of size
in terms of size
between different breeds of dogs.
between between different breeds of dogs.
Very good. Okay, what do we mean by smuggling? What do we mean by smuggling? By smuggling, we
By
mean
smuggling, we
taking
mean
something
taking
into
something
or out
into
of a
or
country
out.
illegally.
Mm?
Now, taking something into or
Taking
out
something
of
into
a
or
country
out of a country
illegally.
illegally.
Very good. Is it considered a very serious offense to smuggle drugs such as heroin and cocaine into your country? Is it considered a very serious offense to smuggle drugs such as heroin and cocaine into your country? Yes,
Yes,
it's considered
it's
a
considered
very serious offense
a very serious
to
offense
smuggle drugs
to
such
smuggle
as
drugs
heroin
such as
and cocaine
heroin and
into
cocaine
my country.
into my country
Very good. What do we mean by a drug company? What do we mean by a drug company? By a drug company,
by a drug
we
company.
mean a company that
We mean a company
produces drugs
that produces
for use
drugs for
in
use
medical treatments.
in medical treatment.
Very good. Give me a sentence with the word very in it, used with the meaning of exact or extreme. Give me a sentence with the word very in it, used with the meaning of exact or extreme. You're the very person
You are the very person
I'm looking for.
I'm looking for.
The car was parked
The car
at
was
the
parked
very end of the street.
at the very end of the street.
Very good. Okay, what do we mean when we say that a man fought his enemies one by one? What do we mean if we say that a man fought his enemies one by one? When we say that a
When we
man
say
fought
that a
his
man
enemies
fought his
one by
enemies
one, we
one by
mean
one,
he
we
fought
mean
his enemies
he fought his
one
enemies
at a time,
one at a time,
not all together.
not all together.
Very good. Okay, let me just scroll down. Okay, here we go. What are articles? Where are articles normally published? Where are articles normally published? Articles are normally
Articles
published
normally published
in magazines,
in magazine,
newspapers, or journal,
report, or journal,
or on a website
or on a
such
website
as a blog.
such as a blog.
Very good. How can we decide whether to write an article in a formal, neutral, or informal style? How can we decide whether to write an article in a formal, neutral, or informal style? We can decide whether
We
to
can
write
decide
an
whether
article
to write
in
an
a
article
formal,
in a
neutral,
formal,
or
neutral,
informal style
or informal
by
style
thinking about
by thinking
where
about
it will be published
where it will be
and who
published,
will read it.
and he will read it,
And who will read it.
and who will read
So
it.
very good. Why should we try to make an article interesting to read? Why should we make an article interesting to read? We should try to make
We should try
an
to read
article
an article
interesting to read
interesting to read
because the reader has
because the
no
reader
obligation
has no
to
obligation
keep reading.
to keep reading.
Very good. What should we put at the start of an article? What should we put at the start of an article? At the start of an
At the start
article,
of an
we
article,
should put an
we should
eye-catching title. We should
we
put
should put
an
an
eye-catching, very good,
catching title,
and an interesting
and interesting
first sentence
for
or
sentence
introduction
or
paragraph.
intro or introduction paragraph.
Very good. Why is it a good idea to use the pronoun you where appropriate? Why is it a good idea to use the pronoun you where appropriate? It's a good idea to
It's a good
use
idea
the
to use
pronoun you
the pronoun you
where appropriate because it
where
helps to keep
appropriate because it helps to keep
the reader interested.
the reader interested.
Very good. If a barbecue fire gets out of control and sets some trees alight, which emergency service would you call? If a barbecue fire gets out of control and sets some trees alight, which emergency service would you call? If a barbecue fire
If a
got
barbecue
out
fire
of control
got out of
and
control
set some trees alight,
and sets
some trees alight,
some thread alight,
I'd call the fire
I
brigade.
call the fire brigade.
Very good. Sometimes in a bus, we see a notice saying, please do not alight until the bus stops. What does that mean? Sometimes in a bus, we see a notice saying, please do not alight until the bus stops. What does it mean? A notice in a bus
And notice in
that
a bus
says,
that
please
says
do not alight.
they,
That says,
that
please
says
do not
please
alight
do not alight
until the bus stops
until the bus stops
means, please
means
do not get off
please do not get off
until the bus stops.
until the bus stop.
Very good. If one football player tackles another in a dangerous fashion, what happens? If one football player tackles another in a dangerous fashion, what happens? If one football
If one
player tackles
football player
another in a
tackles
dangerous
another
fashion,
in a dangerous fashion,
the player is
the player
reprimanded
is
or
reprimanded
punished.
or punished.
Very good. Have you ever been in a situation where you've been forced to resort to violence? Have you ever been in a situation where you've been forced to resort to violence? Yes or no?
No,
I've never been
I've
in a
never been
situation
in a situation
where I've been forced
where I've been
to
forced
resort to violence.
to resort to violence.
Very good. Can you foresee a time in the future where governments might resort to banning the private use of cars in an effort to tackle the world's climate problems? Can you foresee a time in the future when governments might resort to banning the private use of cars in an effort to tackle the world's climate problems? Yes or no?
Yes,
I can foresee a
I
time
can foresee
in the
a
future
time in the
when
future
governments
when
might
government
resort to
might
banning
resort
the private
to banning
use of cars
private use of
in
cars
an effort to tackle
in iPhone to
the
tackle
world's climate problems.
the world climate problems.
Very good. Okay. Have you ever bid for anything successfully in an auction? Have you ever bid for anything successfully in an auction? Yes or no?
Yes,
I've have bid
I've a bit
for something successfully
for something successfully
in an auction.
in an auction.
Very good. What did you buy? What did you buy? I bought
I bought a jewelry,
a what?
jewelry.
Okay, very good. Okay, next. What's the meaning of the word undo? What's the meaning of the word undo? The meaning of the word
The meaning
undo
of the word,
is
the word
excessive
undo is excessive.
Very good. Give me a sentence with the word unduly in it. Give me a sentence with the word unduly in it, please. I was not
I
unduly
was not.
worried
You're worried
about the fact that
about the fact
I
that
hadn't yet received
I haven't yet
an
received
answer to my letter.
an, an answer to my letter.
Very good. What does the verb hurtle mean? What does the verb hurtle mean? The verb hurtle
The verb
means
further
to
means
move very quickly
to move very quickly
in an uncontrolled
in an uncontrolled
and usually
and
dangerous
usually
manner.
dangerous manner.
Where could give me an example? Give me an example, please. The horse and cart
The horse in cars
came hurtling
came hurtling
round the corner
round the corner
at a frightening pace.
at a frightening pace.
Very good. Would you ever consider adopting a stray dog or a cat? Would you ever consider adopting a stray dog or a cat? Yes or no?
No,
I'd never consider
I've never considered
adopting a stray dog
adopting
or a
a
cat.
stray dog or cat.
Very good. If you walk through a deep puddle, would your shoes and socks get soggy? If you walk through a deep puddle, would your shoes and socks get soggy? Yes. If I
Yes,
walk through
if I walk
a deep puddle,
through a deep
my
puddle,
shoes and socks
my, my shoes and socks
would get soggy.
would get soggy.
Very good. And what kind of noise would your shoes make? And what kind of noise would your shoes make? My shoes would make
My shoes would make
a squelching noise.
a screeching noise.
Very good. Okay. Are you easily startled by sudden loud noises? Are you easily startled by sudden loud noises? Yes or no?
Yes,
I'm easily startled
I'm easily startled
by sudden loud noises.
by sudden lively noises.
By one more. By sudden loud noises.
By sudden loud noises.
Very good. If you were absorbed in a book and someone behind you tapped you on the shoulder, would it give you a start? If you're absorbed in a book and someone behind you tap you on the shoulder, would it give you a start? Yes.
Yes,
If I were absorbed
if I were
in a
absorbed
book and
in a
someone
book
behind
in
me
someone
tapped
behind me,
me on the shoulder,
tap me on the shoulder,
it'd give me a start.
it did give me a start.
Very good. Are you the kind of person who does things on impulse, or do you tend to think things over first? Are you the kind of person who does things on impulse, or do you tend to think things over first? Yes or no?
No,
I'm not the kind of
I'm
person
not the kind
who
of
does
condition
things on
who does
impulse.
things on
I
impulse.
tend to think things
I tend to think things
over first.
over first.
Very good. What does the word random mean? What does the word random mean? The word random means
The word random means
without aim or
without
purpose,
aim or
or
purpose,
without conscious consider
or,
selection.
or without conscious
Selection.
selections.
Very good. Give me an example. Give me an example, please. During his show,
During his
the
show,
magician got
the magician
random members
got random
of
members
the audience to
of
help
the
him
audience
on stage.
to help him on stage.
Very good. Do you anticipate that your country's prosperity will rise in the next 10 years or so? Or do you anticipate that your country will become less prosperous? Do you anticipate that your country's prosperity will rise in the next 10 years or so? Or do you anticipate that your country's will become less prosperous? Yes or no? Yeah.
Yes,
I anticipate that
I I anticipate
my
that
country's prosperity
my country's
will
prosperity
rise in the
will
next
rise
10
in the
years or
next
so.
10, 10 years or so.
Very good. Why do football boots have studs on the bottom? Why do football boots have studs on the bottom? Football boots have
Football
studs
boots
on the
have
bottom
stand
to
on the bottom
ensure that
to ensure
they grip
that
the ground well
they grip the ground
and
well
prevent players
and prevent
from
players
slipping over.
from slipping over.
Very good. Have you ever dozed off while watching a film at the cinema? Have you ever dozed off while watching a film at the cinema? Yes or no?
Yes,
I have sometimes
I have
dozed
sometimes
off while
those off
watching a film
while while watching a film
at the cinema.
at the cinema.
Very good. What's the opposite of doing something voluntarily? What's the opposite of doing something voluntarily? The opposite of
The
doing
opposite
something
of doing something
Voluntarily is
voluntarily
against your will.
is against the will.
Very good. Would you say you had a very strong will? Would you say you had a very strong will? Yes or no?
No,
I wouldn't say
I wouldn't
I
say
had a very strong
I
will.
had a very strong will.
Very good. What's the difference between the verb munch and nibble? What's the difference between the verb munch and nibble? The difference between the
The difference
verbs
between the
munch
verbs
and nibble
munch
is
and
that
nibble
when we
is that
munch food,
when we munch
we
food,
move our jaws a great
we move
deal,
our jaws a great deal,
rather like a cow
rather like a cow
eating grass.
eating grass,
Whereas when we
whereas
nibble food,
when we nibble food,
we take tiny bites,
we take tiny
rather
bite,
like a mouse.
rather like a mouse.
Very good. Are there any industrial estates on the outskirts of your town? Are there any industrial estates on the outskirts of your town? Yes or no?
Yes,
There are some
there are
industrial estates
some industrial
on the
estate
outskirts of my
on the
town.
outskirts of my town.
Very good. When purchasing property in your country, do buyers usually use an estate agent rather than deal directly with vendors? When purchasing property in your country, do buyers usually use an estate agent rather than deal directly with vendors? Yes or no?
Yes,
When purchasing property in my
when
country,
purchasing property in my country,
buyers usually use
buyers usually
an
use
estate agent
an
rather
estate
than
agent
deal
rather than
directly with vendors.
deal, deal directly with vendors.
Very good. What does the phrase absent-minded mean? What does the phrase absent-minded mean? The phrase
The phrase
absent-minded means
absent-minded means
forgetful.
forgetful.
Do elderly people tend to be rather absent-minded? Do elderly people tend to be rather absent-minded? Yes.
Yes,
Elderly people
elderly people
tend to be rather
tend to be rather
absent-minded.
absent-minded.
Do most teenagers regard their parents as narrow-minded? Do most teenagers regard their parents as narrow-minded? Yes. Most
Yes,
teenagers
most teenagers
regard their parents
regard their
as
parents
narrow-minded.
as narrow-minded.
Give me a sentence with the phrase like-minded. Give me a sentence with the phrase like-minded, please. Their marriage
Their
is
marriage
successful
is successful
mainly because
mainly
they're
because
extremely
they are extremely
like-minded.
like-minded.
Very good. Do you prefer to eat bread and cheese in big hunks or slice into sandwiches? Do you prefer to eat bread and cheese in big hunks or slice into sandwiches? I prefer to eat
I prefer to
bread
eat
and cheese
bread and cheese
in
in big hunks.
big hunks. Very good. Okay. Road pool. Let me just scroll down. Okay, here we go. Let's start. Name some edible flowers. Name some edible flowers, please. Some edible flowers.
Name some
Uh,
edible
one
flowers.
more. Some
Uh,
edible flowers
some edible
are
flowers
roses,
are roses,
sunflowers, basil,
sunflowers,
and clover.
basil, and clover.
Very good. Okay, what do we do with soup if it's blonde? What do we do with soup if it's blonde? We add some salt.
We add some
If
salt.
soup is bland,
If soup is bland,
where should we plant crops? Where should we plant crops? We should plant crops
we should plant
in
crops
fertile soil.
in fertile soil.
Is it easy to trust someone who looks sinister? Is it easy to trust someone who looks sinister? No, it
No,
isn't easy
it isn't
to
easy
trust someone who
to
looks
trust someone
sinister.
who looks
It's
sinister.
difficult.
It's difficult.
Does a person's face look happy when he hears a bad news? Does a person's face look happy when he hears a bad news? No. A person's
No,
face
a person's face
doesn't look happy
doesn't look
when
happy
he hears a bad
when he
news.
hears a bad
It
news.
looks grim.
It looks grim.
Where if you do exercise regularly, does your body become flexible? If you do exercise regularly, does your body become flexible? Yes. If you
Yes,
do
if you
exercise
do
regularly,
exercise
your
regularly,
body becomes flexible.
your body becomes
Flexible.
flexible.
Very good. Are there any excellent restaurants parallel to the house where you live? Are there any excellent restaurants parallel to the house where you live? Yes or no?
Yes,
There are some
there are
excellent restaurants
some excellent restaurants
parallel to the house
parallel to the house
where I live.
where I live.
Very good. Okay, next. When we're comparing things, what does it communicate if we put not nearly, nowhere near, or nothing like in front of the structure as? When we're comparing things, what does it communicate if we put not nearly, nowhere near, or nothing like in front of the structure as? When we're comparing
When
things. When
when
we're
we are
comparing things.
comparing things,
If we put not nearly,
if we put not
nowhere
nearly,
near, or
nowhere
nothing
near,
like
or nothing
in
like
front of the structure
in front of the structure
as
as us.
okay, but we can't finish that anymore, so we stop there for today, but very good practice.